Sorry, I forgot to mention Jerry. The disability campaigners, Access for All. Yeah. The retired workers from ESB and RTE. The Senior Citizens Parliament. Dublin Council of Trade Unions. SIP2 retired members. ESB retired members. I think USI are certainly here. UCD. Spark.
So if you could stand that way with your banner and all you could hold them up high then.
This is the important banner, push for the 18th. Okay. Read. This is the important one for the push for the 18th,
yeah, so a few people around the box.
Yeah. It'd be helpful if you see the senior citizens.
Yeah, somebody with a bill.
Just different bodies. If you're involved, then somebody can stand behind and then somebody can stand at the back. And then maybe somebody in front.
Nothing the problem.
You can't get back up there. We just came around here with people holding bills as well, and then just bring it, cram it into this.
Yeah, if we've any more of the reps from the different groups.
Yeah, anybody else? Senior Citizens Parliament. Go back here.
Yeah, we might move to the side. Hold that.
Yeah, can you either go into
Dail the protest.
About the rural loads of bills.
Yeah, let's take a bill. No money.
and
another one here.
Yeah, no money.
Will you put bills in the letterbox there first?
Do you want to join and get into the photo shoot?
Sorry, Nick, can I get by you there? Just a try for me shooting this dog. Shoot it from here. Would you mind pulling back all together, Nick? Because I'm just going to get the back of your head in the picture. It looks like you're important as well, so you might want to put a bit in. So, just right here, guys. Sorry.
I'm not senior citizen yet, I'm not quite yet.
Hang on, can we just do a picture first? Put stuff in the letterbox. Hold on, just pull out for a second. I'm just in there. Yeah, that's right. Everybody just look in here, please. Thank you.
Great turnout here outside the door. Cost of living crisis, so you can see how many organisations are there from so many bodies.
Yeah, no
worries. Collaboration organisations.
Too happy.
Very dumb faces.
We should be grumpy looking.
Can we get some slogans going? Would that be good for it?
Yeah.
The cost of living is just too high! 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 Just too high. The cost of living is just too high. The cost of living is just too high. The cost of living is just too high. Easing or heasing is not a choice. 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 The cost of living is just too high. 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 Easing or heasing is not a choice. 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 Easing or easing
It's not our choice.
Easing or easing
It's not our choice.
Easing or easing
It's not our choice.
Start the protest properly. Do you want to get people putting the bill? Yeah. So if some of the reps will, maybe if we get the students and some of the pensioner groups and retired workers, a TD from each of the party groups, private security workers, just to stand near the thing and put the bills in.
Push it all the way, and then just push towards it. Straight ahead.
I was going to, but
We get one of the pensioners maybe to do it as well.
must be in a wolf.
What's the name of the group?
Dail Senior Citizens Parliament.
How are you? Nice to see you. No. It's nice to see you out and about and supporting the protest.
Hiya.
Can you tell us a bit what the purpose of today's protest is about, Paul?
So today's protest is the first protest of the Cost of Living Coalition. The next protest, very importantly, is on a Saturday, the 18th of June, starting at Parnell Square at 1 o'clock. But basically this is a coalition involving people for profit, Sinn Féin, trade unionists, students' unions, retired staff associations, many, to fight for action on the cost of living crisis. We don't accept the idea that there's nothing more the government can do. They can impose price controls, for example. Even the European Commission today is talking about price controls. They can impose price controls on the cost of fuel, home heating oil, petrol and diesel, etc. They could roll out retrofitting immediately, for example, attic installation. They could have free public transport, get people out of private cars into public transport. They could control the cost of rent and mortgages through, for example, with proper rent controls. They could increase the basic payments for people on social welfare, on pensions, on carers, people living in real poverty conditions, and they could support the call for workers to have a pay increase at least equal to the rate of inflation, so they're not losing out. Thank you.
Easing or easing is not a choice. 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 The cost of living is too damn high. 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 Yeah. Should we try it? Fine Gael Greens, Fianna Fáil. We can't afford to live at all. That's a hard one, but we get the hang of it. Fine Gael Greens, Fianna Fáil. We can't afford to live.
And then we should do a video.
John, come up here and do it. You see.
I'm not sure what we're speaking out of this cable.
Fine Gael Greens, Fianna Fáil. To live at all. Fine Gael Greens Fianna Fáil! 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 Okay. I wonder, would it be helpful for you to get shots of all the organisations that are here in a shot from across the road, would it? Yeah, if we could try and fan out, we're getting banners. We have those white placards with the different organisations, and people have brought their own banners. And maybe fan out facing the road with the banners at the front, like the SIP2 banner there, the Trades Council banner. So, a shot with all the banners at the front. Yeah. If you've got a banner, bring it up there with that banner. We have different one here. Dublin Council of Trade Unions, Dublin Unite, Dublin Activists there. Yeah. I think Trades Council have their own banner there. Access for All. Yeah. Which group is that? Sorry. Right to Change. Yeah. Get your banner up. Senior Citizens Parliament. We'll see you there. And we'll try a new slogan as well, because incomes is another big issue for people here. The people need a pay rise and a living income. The people need a pay rise. 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 The cost of living is too damn high. The cost of living. 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 Eating or heating is not a choice. 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 Eating or heating. 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 Now you tell the members to take a bit of this one. Fine Gael Greens Fianna Fáil. 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 Fine Gael Greens Fianna Fáil.
Jane them all.
Fine Gael Greens Fianna Fáil. Fine Gael Greens Fianna Fáil. Fine Gael Greens Fianna Fáil. The cost of living is too damn high. The cost of living. 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 The cost of living!
Too damn high!
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 Okay. Give yourselves a round of applause for coming out here. We had 2 years where we couldn't really protest because of the pandemic, but I think we're here to send a message to this government that the people are taking to the streets over their failure to address a cost of living crisis that is completely out of control and that is crucifying workers, pensioners, young people, single parents, people with disabilities, many of the vulnerable in our society, the elderly, the young, those with special needs, you name it. Ordinary people are being crucified. There are a small group of people, energy companies, landlords, vulture funds, who are doing very well out of the cost of living crisis, but ordinary people are being crucified. And every single worker and pensioner has in fact taken a pay cut as inflation and the cost of living goes out of control. So today is the first public outing of a new coalition that is vowing to mobilise on the streets until we get the action necessary to deal with the cost of living crisis. And we want to signal today that we will be joining people across Britain and the TUC in a national day of protest on June the 18th, Saturday, June the 18th, when there's going to be a national demonstration on the streets demanding action on the cost of living. So we have many organisations, parties, trade unions, pensioner groups, campaign groups represented here, and we want them all to have their voices heard, because there's a lot of people, if people will keep it brief, so we get every group represented. So I haven't given people advance notice, but maybe I see there's some Sinn Féin TDs here, so if one of you wants to, or is it Paul Gavin, but then if I could also, if the SB, retired workers, the Senior Citizens Parliament, the Trades Council, the student unions, and that'll do us for a start. And I know there's more have to speak. And if people just maybe for a couple of minutes explain why you're here and why you're committed to this campaign. So Paul Gavin from Sinn Féin first.
Thanks very much, Richard. It's great to see so many colleagues and comrades from across a whole range of organisations here today. Special salute to my comrades in TIP2. Great to see you here in strength today. Great to see the unions, the student unions here today as well, and so many other organisations. Comrades, I'm here today because life is about choices, and we need to look at the choices the government are making. They made a choice not to combat the cost of living crisis. They told us they're going to do nothing until the budget in October, even though their own economic think tank, the ESRI, has told them they have the scope, they have the money to actually help people, but this government is saying no. So they're saying no in the face of rents going up by 15% where I live in Limerick, people paying €1,500 a month in rent, absolutely put to the pin of their collar. And isn't it remarkable that in all the years that Fine Gael have been in government and Fianna Fáil, they've done nothing to help renters. They've done nothing year after year to help renters. Sinn Féin in government would put a ban on rent increases. We'd insist on it. We'd give money back to the renters via a tax refund. That would put 1 month's money back in their pockets. Then let's look at energy prices. They've gone up by 50%. Here's a shocking fact. The government's energy poverty strategy, yes, they did have one, hasn't been updated for 3 years. In the midst of the biggest cost of living crisis in 40 years, they haven't even bothered to update their energy poverty strategy because they don't care. That's the horrible truth of the matter. They just don't care. So we need to fight back. We need to make positive choices. I tell you what Pierce Doherty would do with his finance minister. He'd increase the minimum wage straight away by 30 cents. He'd increase welfare rates. He'd cut the cost of childcare. There are choices here that all of us can make and should make. But the biggest choice of all, I think, is the choice to insist that this government has had its time. It's out of touch, it's out of its time, and it's time for them to go. Let's unite, comrades. Let's unite behind the Cost of Living Coalition. Let's fight for a better future. Stand up, fight back. Gurmugad.
Great stuff, Paul. Maybe if we have somebody from the ESB or the Senior Citizens Parliament. ESB? Brilliant. What's your name? Tony Collins, Chairman of the ESB retired staff. People who put all of their lives into building this country.
Thanks, Richard. We're here as ESB pensioners because, like everybody else, we feel it in our pockets. As ESB pensioners, we have enjoyed only less than 1% of an increase in our pensions in the last 13 years. So the recent spike in inflation has affected everybody, and affected us, as I say, in particular. As pensioners, we don't have a voice. You know, once you retire, anybody here that's retired, once you're retired, you do not have a voice. You don't have a right to represent yourself or your organisation with your former employer. And Breed Smith and her colleagues and People Before Profit have put a bill before the Dail last year, and we're hoping that the second reading of that bill will be in June. So that would actually give all workers a right to have a voice with their former employer and to be able to have access to the WRC, which is where you can make representations and make your case for whatever it is, an increase in your pension or something that affects your pensioner rights. So we're, as I say, we're fully supportive of this coalition, and we will be here whenever future events take place. Thank you very much.
And could we just have a speaker from the Senior Citizens Parliament as well? What's her name? Sue, of course, sorry, Sue. Sue Shaw from the Senior Citizens Parliament.
How you doing, folks? It's great to see so many of us out today. Look, I'm not going to take too much of your time. All the factual information is out there, but what we're saying clearly is that if you're being asked to live on a state transfer, and for us it's the state pension, you cannot do it. I talked this morning to one of the guys on the radio and he asked about food banks. Seriously, in a wealthy country like this, we're saying that the answer to the problem is a food bank? And how valuable they are, there is no doubt about that. But we are clearly saying that there has to be security of income to match the ongoing and ever-increasing costs of living. Pensioners are asked time out of number to accept a paltry €5. We got €5 last year, and for the 2 years prior to that we got nothing. I am saying that is wrong. We are calling on this government to give us some guarantees of an adequate income that will match the cost of living. We are calling seriously for them to hear that people are making those awful choices between heating or eating. We are clearly saying that just is not good enough. The pensioners of this country have worked solidly and hard, just like our young parents today who are doing it. But they do not want to hear, sorry, we cannot afford to help you. Yes, you can. I'm looking at a sign here. Taoiseach, €89 per hour. Minimum wage, $10.50 per hour. Our pensioners live on less. Let's stand up and be united. Let's show this government we will not take this any longer. Thank you.
Well spoken, Sue. And I think it's great that we have a breadth of coalition that goes from the students to the pensioners and workers in between. But it'd be good to hear from some of the student reps. So whoever's going to speak for the students, maybe they come up. And I just noticed as well that Jane Crow and Carmel and some of the Debenhams workers who are real heroes of the pandemic, if any of them want to say a word, we'd love to hear from them as well.
So we're here today with the Union of Students in Ireland and students' unions across Ireland because the cost of living for students has always been astronomically high. We pay the highest fees in the EU. Constantly we are seeing student accommodation complexes being built only for the wealthy and not for the working. We have students who are paid absolute bare minimum because they're under the age of 18, so they don't even get minimum wage, they get less. And we have students coming to us in our students' unions who are literally at the brink of homelessness or living in their car while they try to access education. Higher education should not just be for those who can afford it. We shouldn't have a two-tiered education system just for the wealthy. We need to ensure that the government addresses the cost of living so students can access education, they can access a better quality of life, and they can access a home to live in. I didn't have a big speech prepared, but in all seriousness, like, it is an absolute disgrace that students are being left behind yet again, and we're calling on the government to actually make some tangible changes for once to benefit students' lives as opposed to just costing us more money. Thank you.
Brilliant. Jane, I don't know if you want to say a few words on behalf of Debenhams. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you want.
No, I'm fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
But I think we all agree that the Debenhams workers are absolute heroes for the fight they have conducted, and we want to get that bill that is finally going to ensure redundancy rights. Mick Barry's bill, who's standing there, fair play to Mick, for redundancy rights for workers in liquidation, which is a year since the government deferred it, and we want that bill passed into law so there isn't another Debenhams, there isn't another Visa Cortex, there isn't another Clearys. Joan Collins, I think Joan from Independence for Change wanted to say a few words, and we're going to have a song now in a minute as well, just to lighten the moment, but to get the point across. We'll have Joan, and I know there's a few other groups to speak, so don't forget, I haven't forgotten you. Joan Collins.
It's a privilege to be here with the groups that are here today, and I think it's the start of something that has to be built. And I know that people here, the energy that I've seen, will build it. We called a meeting on the cost of living in Crumlin on International Women's Day because we felt that it was really an issue that affected women, particularly and families, and to mark the International Women's Day. And we have a group out in Crumlin now that meet every week or as often as possible to campaign on the cost of living. So we're delighted to be joining the Cost of Living Coalition, and we'll continue to do that. Today, just briefly, I'll end on this, on questions of promised legislation. I put to the Taoiseach that they should bring in a windfall tax on energy companies. He actually conceded that he probably would be looking at it, so I think that's something that we can really push in relation to the programme that the coalition has pulled together. So listen, onwards and let's build for something big on June the 18th, if we can.
Great stuff. Now, just to shout out a few other groups, I'm not sure if they want a speaker, but if they do, we have the Private Security Workers United, who formed recently. That's another group, by the way, who worked on the front line throughout the pandemic, providing security in shops, on public transport, in hospitals, in schools, in state buildings, in private industry. They are on abysmally low pay, absolutely shockingly low pay, and they have started to get organised, demanding that they get decent pay and conditions, and that the government do something to ensure, as a minimum, they get €15 an hour for the vital work they do. So I hope everybody will support their campaign. So anybody else who I'd missed out, please come up and say a word. But Martin Leahy, who's come up from Cork this morning, is going to sing a song which also gets to the very heart of the cost of living crisis. Everyone should have a home.
Some people's misery or other people's gain, enrich the rich and make them richer. They see property as opportunity, a business that'll make the sick the sicker. If they build too many houses, it'll drive down the price. It's just cold economics fit in. So there's no will to address it, cause it's not in their interest. We've seen it over time and time again. Everyone should have a home. Everyone should have a home. In this world, in this life, it's a basic human right to have a dignified place you call your own. Everyone should have a home. Everyone should have a home. Safe and warm where you belong. Everyone should have a home. housing developers that are hung up on greed, hungry vultures swooping from the sky, crucifying rents and they're on the increase. Shamefully they bleed the people dry. All the vacant properties, we can see them in our towns. Sign the papers, take down the boards. A home, not a hotel. A home, not a hostel. A home, not a cardboard box at the side of the road. Everyone should have a home. Everyone should have a home. In this world, in this life, it's a basic human right to have a dignified place you call your own. Everyone should have a home. Everyone should have a home. Safe and warm where you belong. Everyone should have a home. We've got landlords and government who vote and legislate in favour of investments they control. Our leaders, they facilitate and then wave away the emergency created at their door. The moneyed minds get richer and the poor just fade into hovels and holes they can't afford. Dystopian evictions, ruthless repossessions, a wealthy country's people in a stranglehold. Everyone should have a home. Everyone should have a home. In this world, in this life, it's a basic human right to have a dignified place you call your own. Everyone should have a home. Everyone should have a home. Safe and warm where you belong. Everyone should have a home. Safe and warm where you belong. Everyone should have a home. Safe and warm where you belong. Everyone should have a home.